Kia ora koutou, and welcome to this webinar this morning on finding, accessing and using GIS web services. I'm Dwayne Wilkins. I'm a geospatial advisor, capability building here at Land Information New Zealand, and I'm joined today by my colleagues, Ian and Jonathan, who are going to introduce themselves in just a moment. Just want to point out these GeoBytes series are hands-on, practical demonstrations, so we have no PowerPoint, so it's a little bit ad hoc at times as we figure out what we're doing, but we endeavour to show and tell rather than use PowerPoint. So a little bit, we're going to introduce ourselves now. So I'm Dwayne. I'll be demonstrating how to use, how to find some of the web services that we're looking at today, and then also how to add them into some of the online mapping services. So I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Kia ora all. My name is Jonathan. I'm the manager of open data and reuse at LINS. I'm also the product owner of our new LINS base map service. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what web services are, which ones LINS offer, and why you might use them in your day-to-day work.
And kia ora, Ian Harrison. I'm a spatial analyst here at LINS, and I'm just going to do a quick intro into using web services in QGIS.
Cool. Thanks, guys. So we're going to be looking at what are GIS web services, and Jonathan's going to take us through this short introduction and the types that are available, and then how you can use them to save time, reduce data maintenance, key sources of GIS open in New Zealand government open GIS data web services, and we're going to have a look at some considerations for web mapping, and then any other themes based on your questions. So if you can avoid using the Q&A part of Zoom, but just add your questions into the chat, and I will jump in there and just grab the attention of either Ian or Jonathan for those questions. So if I hand over to you, Jonathan, and you're going to tell us a little bit about what GIS web services are and the different types.
Sure, I'll just get my screen up. Can you guys see my screen now, Dwayne?
Yes.
Cool.
Good.
All right. So let me start by saying I'm in no way an expert in these. The fact that I'm here talking about APIs and web services should speak to how simple they can be. I'm not a data engineer or a developer in any way, but I've used them lots over the last few years, and they can be really easy if you're just not overly scared of them and don't avoid using them. So web services are essentially a type of API. A web service is an interaction between two different machines over a network. I've been told that all web services are APIs, but not all APIs are web services. That makes it sound extremely complicated, which it really isn't. It's simply a system asking another system a question, and this is almost always done via URL.
Whoops. Sorry, Jonathan, somehow you're muted there, mate. Yep, good as.
Did you get any of that? Was it just muted for a second?
Just for a second, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, I want to start just by trying to demystify the URL just for a second. Essentially, when you plug an API into a browser or a URL, you get this sort of feedback, which kind of looks like a bunch of gobbledygook. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But essentially, this query up in the URL is very, very simple. It's basically just a question. It goes along the lines of, hey, LINS, I'm Jonathan, which is your API key. I'd like to use this service, a WFS service maybe, to deliver addressing data, a layer ID, and just give me the first 10 features, please. So it can be decoded, and it's actually quite simple once you start to learn the syntax. So that's a real basic breakdown of what a web service might look like. Luckily at LINS we use platforms which make using them a lot easier. You probably don't ever need to understand this if you don't want to. I'm now going to give you a view of what some of the APIs that LINS offer are, and how you might use them and how you might find them. So we'll start with probably our main type of data delivery API. It's called WFS, Web Feature Service, and this is a way of us delivering vector or tabular data, so our points, lines, and polygons from our systems into yours. When you're at the LINS data service, all of the APIs that are available for a particular layer can always be found under services. So we're looking at street addresses right now. If you were to click services, you'll see a range of different ones that are available. Here's web feature services. So this is how you'd get that raw vector data with all of the attribution involved. If you get good at working WFS queries, you can filter them by attribute type, bounding boxes. You can transfer coordinate systems all in that query. So it becomes really quite useful and a dynamic thing to use.
Hey, Jonathan, I have a question for you. See the following URL lists of WFS layers. There's 2 there.
Mm-hmm.
I just realized generally I need to click the second one if I want that particular layer, because the first one will give me access to all of the layers, right? Yeah,
the top one gives you, basically, it's like the root folder. So for our WFS service, so you'll see everything that you can access via WFS. The second is specific capabilities around, in this case, New Zealand addressing. And then the third one is an example of how to get features, which is probably the most common thing you do within WFS. Good question. One thing I do want to say about WFS is it's commonly used as a bulk data delivery tool. This is not what it was designed for. It's more around getting a specific number of features. Often when you ask to use WFS for our full data sets, it grinds to a bit of a halt. That's not the end of the world, but just know that it's not like super efficient to use in that way. I also want to mention that using our WFS services, we have this cool thing called change sets, which allows you to download extract or query just features that have changed over a specific period. This always takes a really long time to load, but essentially I can go from one date to another. It takes a little while to highlight. And here is the API query now, or web service query, to extract just that data. Now, I will move on. So that was WFS. The next web service that's really useful is WMTS. That's Web Map Tile Services. This is a quick and modern way to deliver data into a mapping interface. It basically delivers small squares of imagery really quickly. It's mostly used for raster data or gridded data, but we commonly transfer vector data into that format as well to deliver it this way. It's basically what you're seeing when we use a web map in day-to-day use, and as we pan around, we watch little squares of data appear on the edge as we move the map. WMTS services can be found in exactly the same way as WFS services. So by clicking the service tab, then you will find the WMTS URL there. The next service I want to describe is WMS. Now, we don't actually offer that anymore, but a lot of government agencies still do. That's Web Mapping Services. It's kind of the same thing as WMTS, except rather than giving you multiple smaller tiles for whatever map you're trying to display, it gives you one single image to match the extent that you've requested. So it's a bit simpler in some ways, but it's a little bit less quick, a little bit more complicated to use. It's also not necessarily the most prevalent API. So you're probably better off learning WMTS if you're starting on this path now. Next thing I'll mention is our ESRI REST service. LINZ now offer 13 key data sets via an ESRI REST service. This is one of the simplest ways you can interact with our data via API. If you really want to interact with the data via URL, you can by clicking on a data set and finding the URL slightly down the page here. However, the real purpose of these services is more about surfacing data within an ESRI environment. So it is an API, but it has really good user interface and functionality built around it. So you don't actually ever need to put in a query yourself. You should just be able to go to ESRI's Living Atlas or search Arcgis Online, type in the name of the data set, and it should define those queries for you and make everything appear nicely within your web map. So we've got a range of other APIs. We've got XYZ, which is a developer-based API for delivering base maps. We've got CSW, which is like a metadata cataloging type thing. And then we've got some coordinates specific APIs for the LINZ data service. There's really a lot out there. And I'd really encourage you to try having a play with them. It's only our most complicated customers that know how to break these services. So you're pretty much right to go and mess around, have a play, see what the results are. You're unlikely to cause any damage. It's not something you need to be scared of. So before I finish, I just want to go over some of the reasons why you might use web services in your work. First of all, it reduces duplicated effort. If you're finding yourself in a role where you're performing the same data extraction task on a weekly or a monthly basis, it's a really good clue that you should probably start using web services in one way or another. The idea that part of an analyst's role should be going and collecting data and moving it from one website to an internal server is long gone. You should be using an API in these cases. It reduces stale data. When you do transfer that data from LINZ and put it on your S drive within your own organization, it almost instantly becomes stale, within a week. By leaving it there and letting it get older and older, you're increasing the chance that someone will come along and use it, not understand its age, and potentially could make decisions based on the stale data. You storing that data on your S drive or your F drive or wherever you keep it is also has a whole lot of other implications, like you're using up storage space that you really shouldn't be. You may well need to back that data up because it's being used as part of a process. So there are lots of sort of downstream effects of actually extracting that data that we can avoid by using web services and having that live connection to the authoritative database. It improves decision making. when you plug a web service into your web map or your tool and have that live link to data, it means that decision makers using your product, the thing you've put together, can always feel secure that they're basing their decisions on the most up-to-date information. And it increases data reliability and overall trust in all of our work. We're all making web maps on a daily basis and putting this data out there. If we put stale data in there and then forget about our map, it could hang around a lot longer than we think. And I can see a situation where over the coming years where we have a lot of unmaintained web maps, either on external websites or just out in the ecosystem, and a lot of them will be connected to data that's just sitting on servers rather than connected to the actual source of truth. Cool. I think that's about all from me.
I got a quick question for you, Jonathan, just to confirm. So Joshua is asking, with the Arcgis Online and the ESRI is making forcing everything to be HTTPS secured. Ian's answered already, but just want to confirm that all of these web services are available as secured HTTPS services, aren't they?
Yeah, I believe so, but I will refer to Ian on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm not so familiar with the ESRI ones, but I'd be shocked if they weren't. So, yeah, everything's HTTPS nowadays.
Yeah. So just for those of you unfamiliar with that, if you're an Arcgis Online user, ESRI is implementing a force requirement that all links or all web map services must be HTTPS. They won't accept HTTP without the S in sometime in the coming months, and I think they delayed it, but yeah, cool. Hey, thanks, Jonathan.
No problem.
So next, I'm going to go for a bit of a stroll for just 5 minutes on the key sources of government open data for GIS web services. So we're going to start with sharing my screen. And so I'm going to put this link in the chat so that everyone else can have a tutu as well. Where is my chat? Here we go. No, I've lost the chat. Here it is. Okay, if you want to have a go as well and just listen in and have a look yourself, you're welcome to. So the source of all data for me is a directory from data.gov.nz. And so what I've done is I've added 2 filters onto this search. So I've gone to data.gov. Actually, I've added 3 by the looks of it. And I've said, show me all the data sets that are in the format of KML, SHP, and file GDB from geodatabase. So just down the side here, you can see here I've ticked on. Now, if I was engineering type, maybe I wanted some DWGs for CAD. If I was a map info type, maybe I wanted some map info, I could put that on too, but the numbers are very similar. So I suspect it's just the same data in different types. I'm not interested in PDFs. Maybe I'm interested in some GeoPackages too. So I can tick those on. But let's say, for example, actually, this is curious, is I wouldn't have been interested in a CSV previously, but MSD in level 4 COVID, there was a very important data set there of social services. It's all geocoded nicely, but it's there as a CSV. So just point out that CSV can be useful too. So what I've done is I've filtered, and you can see we've got 7,919 data sets. Some of them will be duplicates, some of them will be at different scales, but let's go through them one by one. We'll start with, no, let's not go through them one by one. Let's have a look down here. So we can see on the left-hand side, this is giving us some indication of the public open GIS data that's available from different organizations, and then also by theme. So if those of you who tuned in for our resilience and climate change webinar the other day with Casey, you would have seen the work that Casey had been doing and others around grouping up data for resilient and climate change as a theme. And we can also look at, there are most of the data, the vast majority of data, I'd say like 99.9%, but there are just 1 or 2 or 3 data sets that have very specific conditions just to be aware of. And I'm not sure if it's still the case, but I believe things like the NZTA road database, road centerline database was just had some conditions around it. But this is a great place to start. The difference between this and say Googling for something, with Google, you kind of need to have an idea of what exactly you're looking for. With this, you can go for a browse and you can discover, and that keyword is discovery, of what else is available out there. Let me just check. So that's data.gov. There's also that query that I've posted in the chat for you. There's a link here. I just want to share in terms of a little bit of information just to support what Jonathan was saying. And for those of you interested in metadata as well, I'm going to put that one in the chat too just now. There we go. And a little bit, particularly around the incremental data and the chain set API. So as Jonathan was describing, it's possible to avoid downloading the entire data set every time, for example, with parcels and other things. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to show you was we put together a bit of a story map that I'm just going to find somewhere here for you. Where has it gone? Here it is. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. Where's my chat gone? Okay, it's not coming up. Go chat, there we go. Okay, so this, I'm not going to go through this whole story map, but I just want to point out this is kind of a, how would I describe it? A quick tour of my favorite data sets, if we think of it that way. So starting with data.gov, then we've got a link here to the LINS data service. We've got a link to the LINS REST services, and there are links within the LINS data service to those layers that are available in the REST service. Is MFE have got a very similar portal. I'll just click on that to show you, but we won't go through that one, but you can access data sets there. And just as Jonathan was describing, there are data sets there available as WFS and for download, of course. There's the doc open data as well. So anything that's available as a REST service, you can generally find within your Arcgis Online or in Arcgis Pro. Some of them, for example, if you wanted to download to do some heavy crunching, then this is where you can find those data sets. Stats NZ, Primary Industries MPI, have got this open data website. And you can go in here and you can search if you know that there's a particular data set you're after, or you can browse through the different data sets that they've got. So if we just go in here and go fish. And so we can go through and have a look, different kinds of fish, different types of fish, depending on what we're looking for, different types. So this is feature layers, documents, maybe there's PDF metadata file or something like that, web maps as well, and other categories here. So that's just a quick example from MPI. NZ Defence Force have got some interesting data for the Pacific. NZTA have got open data portal. Ministry of Education have got all their schools out there as CSV files. And there's a few regional council links here as well. Now, these are the links to the open data portals for each regional council. I don't think I quite got to the district councils. Sorry, guys. But if there's demand, I can always go through and do that and add them to that story. And of course, RetroLens is a bonus there where you can access historical data. Okay, I think that was the main thing I needed to show you. But almost every major agency in New Zealand that uses GIS has got data available. And so if we come in here and we go, say, for example, I'm looking for Niwa rivers. I haven't done the search before, and it could be that I've got too many filters on, for example, or it could be that River is not a good search. Niwa River is not a good search key term. Here we go. So now I can see, here we go, because I wasn't looking for the full description of Niwa. And that'll take me through to secondary page, and then if I click and just keep clicking until I get where I want to go. So here I'm at the source of the data set. So this page is going to give me a direct link. So I can come in here, I can just explore around, see what the related data. Here's a bit of a quick preview. Okay, I can look at the metadata if I want. I can create a web map online if I want. Quick preview at the data table if it lets me. But here is where I really want to go, and this is the APIs. And I grab that GeoService, copy that, and now I can paste it into my web maps or other things. Many of these seem to put this query, and I'm not sure why, but what I'm after is if I come back here, just take off that query part, come back to, say, map server, and here I can explore and I can browse through all of the data that's available. In this case, randomly through Greater Wellington Regional Council, I can go through there and I can use these links to add to my map. So I'm going to pause there and hand over to Ian, and Ian's going to show us how to add some of those web services into a GIS.
Cool. Yep. I'll just try and share my screen here. Oh, what's happened? Right. Can you see that, Dwayne?
Yep, good as.
Can you see QGIS?
Yep, good as.
So
Okay.
here I have QGIS with nothing in it. So I think I'll start by adding a base map, and I'll go to the base map service that Jonathan mentioned initially. Whoops, just minimize that. And on the top right, there's a menu with the URLs you can use for WMTS and also XYZ, but we're not worried about XYZ. We're just interested in WMTS. And I'll choose between New Zealand Transverse Mercator and Web Mercator, and I'll just go NZTN, copy that URL. So coming back into QGIS, they've got this add data button that brings up a whole bunch of different types of data, including web map services and web map tile services. So just go new in here, give it a name, call it base maps, and paste in that URL I've just copied. Usually also down here, I choose the option of smooth pixmap transform. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but it makes it look a little bit better. And now I've got my base maps added as an option, so I can just hit connect and it doesn't work. So I'll just double check I've got that right. Copied. Sometimes a very small change in the URL will just upset everything.
This is all normal stuff.
Yeah. I'm not sure why that's...
Network shouldn't be a network issue.
Hang on. One way to troubleshoot is you can just paste it into your browser, and if you get XML back, that means the web server is fine. I don't know how much debugging I want to do live. I'll just remove and try again. New. I tried this just before and it worked fine, so. No, sometimes it's the network. So we'll try the Lens data service. It could be my connection. I'm on Wi-Fi here, so
Has Q just forgotten that it's connected when you moved rooms? Maybe.
it could have done, but I'm obviously accessing the internet now.
Yeah.
So on the LINS data service, first thing you have to do is make sure you've got an API key. So just click on, once you're logged in, click on your name, go API and web services, and all you need to do is hit the accept terms and create key. And there it's created a key. I don't need to copy that. I can go back to the layer I'm interested in. So I'm looking at Topo 50 maps here. Click on the services tab. And we want the WMTS capabilities. So I copy that. And back to QGIS. Now let's see what it does. So I'll go new, name, Topo 50. And connect. No, there's something, unfortunately, there's something that QGIS isn't recognizing when I've changed my.
Do you want to?
I'll just restart QGIS.
Restart QGIS, right? Yeah.
I'm using QGIS 3.10 here, which is the long-term release. They do a lot of incremental releases as well, but the long-term release is more supported and less prone to having bugs. If you're using an older version like 2 point something, I'd recommend upgrading to 3 point something if you can. They've done quite a few improvements over the last couple of years. So we'll go back, connect, that's better. So with the LDS services, it gives you the choice of the coordinate system here. So I'll just choose NZTM, and there it is. The base maps one, go back here, it looks slightly different. It gives you a choice, but it's all NZTM, and the choice is actually between whether you want the image tiles as JPEGs or PNGs. I don't think it matters. Certainly doesn't matter for QGIS.
Does it go any faster with JPEGs? Because it seems the data is smaller.
I'm not sure. PNG has about 3 different versions, so PNG 8 is pretty fast.
Oh yeah, cool.
So
it matters in the back end of the service. It's more efficient for us to deliver WebP, and some browsers won't take anything but JPEGs, unfortunately. So we have to have all 3 flavors there.
Cool. So that's WMTS. Sorry about the hiccup there, but that's pretty straightforward. I'll just quickly run through WFS. So if I go back to the LINS data service and I'll try and chuck in some roads, which is the layer I want, this one. Again, services tab, and we want to grab this get capabilities URL here. So I copy that. And then in here, we just choose WFS, go new, give it a name. There's this feature paging option. This just means that because WFS is quite a large sort of, I guess, in a way, it's slightly bloated format. There's so much XML, it makes it easier on the system if you chunk it up into pages. So I'll put 10,000, so it's going to get 10,000 records at a time. Connect to that. And here it's going away and talking to the LINS data service. You'll see QGIS will display these orange warnings if there's any network slowness. So once that's come up, just click Add and close that. This should bring up a dialog status box. Here we are. So it'll chug away there. Even though it's a bit slow, QGIS actually works really well with WFS. If you're using ESRI, especially Arcgis Pro, if you can, I'd use the ESRI REST services, because they're optimized for the ESRI apps, and especially Pro, it seems they're still doing some development. It's still a relatively new bit of software. So yeah, WFS support isn't ideal.
Have a go with that in a moment too, but yeah, that's what I found too, is you can do very small data sets, like particularly anything less than 3,000 features, but parcels, for example, doesn't work well at all.
Yeah.
Even sort of small area. Yeah.
While that's loading, I probably should have chosen a smaller layer. I'll just explain change sets.
Yeah, that'd be great.
See if I can. So if I search for addresses, which is one of the examples Jonathan used before, if you go into the history, it's got every revision, every weekly revision of this layer since it went live. That's why it takes so long to load the history. And essentially a change set means you can choose between two different revisions to get the changes. And it's really good if you just want to update your local copy with what's changed. So I've choose last week's changes, copy that URL. Actually, I'll abort this because it's going to take too long. And I'll just go and add in this address change it. So I'll just call it address changes. So it's just the same. I'll put in, say, 5,000 for my pages. So wait for LDS to respond. And the good thing about change sets, it's got an extra column added to the data that tells you what type of change it is, whether it's a new record or it's an update or it's a record that's been deleted.
Every time we're sitting waiting for a server, I kind of imagine one of the dams in South Island kind of just having to open a little bit.
Yeah.
It's processing.
I worked in an office once where when I turned my computer on in the morning, the lights dimmed. I think things are a bit better now, but yes, unfortunately, our Wi-Fi isn't as fast as our network connection. So I'm sure you at home would probably have, and this actually, this is quite a common error. What it means is that it's getting the get capabilities file, but because it's too slow, it's basically chopped it off. And that's why it's saying unexpected end of file. That's disappointing for a demo. I wonder if I can change.
Oh, that's the whole purpose of live things, though, isn't it? That's just what happens sometimes. It's all good. Shall we put you out your misery?
Yeah.
Something that might be worth noting, although it might not work the first time, it only has to work once. Once you get this set up once, you can avoid going back and doing the same task over and over again. So, sometimes it's worth slogging through.
But you can see it's obviously very dependent on the network connection. So just be aware that it's not bomb-proof.
Hey guys, we have a query there from Amy up in the chat. So back when we were looking at image services, so she's saying she's added one of the LINS wraps 2017 imagery to WebNap Using it as a base map, I could not get printing to work, but other ESRI base maps would print. Is there a known issue with this, or do you think could be caused by something else?
I know in other systems, it just won't print any base maps in general. It also depends how far in you're zoomed. Sometimes if you're zoomed in to, the size of an individual property, it may try to jump to the scale that's zoomed in even more, which is just a blank. So try zooming out a bit and see if that works, would be my first suggestion.
I guess the other thing could be to add it on top of a blank base map as a layer, perhaps. And, but if you want to flick it, if you can, I'll put my email in here, Amy, and if you can share with me the link to the specific data set you're using, or web map, if you can share it, and we can have a look at that together after this session.
All right, I'll leave it there. I'll hand back over to you, Dwayne. Okay,
mate, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate a couple of those things that Ian has just shown us, but using Arcgis and AGOL. So I'm just going to share my screen. And the example I'm going to use is the same one I used in the previous webinars, which is the NIWA river lines and watersheds. So this is from the 12 key data sets for resilience and climate change. Let me just check the chat in there. If I leave you guys to mind the chat for a while. So first thing we need is the web service. So if we're going to add something from, let's say, from Lynn's data service, then let me just grab this one here. No, I don't want to download it. I've got topo grid list maps in here already. So I'm going to go to that services tab. So the starting point for me with WMTS is to go find that source, and then come to my Arcgis Online. I'm going to come to a new web map. Okay. So this is where the first thing to keep in mind is what projection you're using. So a lot of the work that I do is around capability building. So NZTM actually takes a fair reasonable amount of capability in an organization to be able to use it effectively. Many organizations are using just plain Web Mercator and WGS84 for their data, particularly those that are just starting up. But first thing I'm going to do is add a layer from web. And this is not an Arcgis web server, but this is a WMTS. And here is the WMS and WFS that the guys have been discussing. And you can also add as a CSV file. One thing I wouldn't recommend is KML for anything, unless you really, really have to, because it's just so messy. Okay, I'm going to paste that in there. And if the blue add layer button comes up, I can just go click and add it. There are ways to add custom parameters, but to be honest, I've never personally used them. I go get layers on here. And this is doing that handshake. And this is where I can pick which one I want to use. So I'll just go add layer in this case. And there it's added. So I didn't have to download however many megagigas that was from LDS. What was that? 10 gigs. Don't have to download it, don't have to maintain it. And that's in an online map. Let's say, for example, I wanted to add another layer, watersheds from NIWA. And this is just a random data set that I don't use that often, but just ended up being my example from the other week. So I can come in here and I can have a look at the coverage. I can do other things, but really all I'm after is right there, copy paste. And so I'm just going to move my Zoom thingy out the way. So let's just find a blank one that I don't need anymore. There we go. Paste. So that's the link that the Open Data Portal has given me, but generally I can't add that directly into my web map. So what I've got to do is come up here and I just go click on here, or you can remove that kind of superfluous stuff there, but sometimes easier just to click on watersheds. So one back, click that link, copy, and then find my web map. Where do we go? Here we go. Add layer from web. Now this case, I know that it's an Arcgis web server. I can paste it in there and I can go browse, or it's ready to add. So I can just add it like that. Now, depending on how it's been set up at the host end, in this case, I can see that the guys have set up, shout out to Tillman, have set up some kind of layer scaling, visible range. So I've got to zoom in to be able to see that. And I'm also seeing that as I've zoomed in, Topo is having to redraw as well. And it could be having some issues with projection and also the overlapping tiles, the way that the tiles are scaled as well. But there's two data sets from two different sources in my web map. Okay, let's come. So any of these data sources here, you can pretty much do the same thing from almost all of the regional councils. With some of the LINS data sets that are available in REST, you can do that as well. But the ones that you can't find in REST, then you have to download and rehost them. Let's come back here. And of course, the other thing you can do is go search for layers, and you can go Living Atlas. And if you just go in here, any of those, however many are there, Jonathan? About 12 or so, 10 core data sets from LINS. So there's building outlines, river name lines, crown property, primary parcels, titles, addressing, coastline, and various other ones.
There's 9 key data sets for resilience, and there's a few others that we've chucked in there to make it more useful.
Oh, yeah. Hey, do you know anything? What's this updated tiling scheme? Do you know what that means? I've seen that a few times there.
That will derail us, seriously.
Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Okay, so something else I wanted to show you was adding that same data into ArcPro desktop. So it's kind of a two-step process with ArcGIS Pro. So start with your map and come over to Insert, go Connections, and this is where I go and I do basically the same workflow as before. So I think I've still got I've got the Niwa rivers on there. So I can go add the catchment, sorry. I come in here and that's going to draw. So the trick with ArcGIS Pro is that you've got to add the connection first. Actually, I've already fallen into the trap. It's a two-step process. Didn't I just say that? I've got to go and then you've got to add the data. So you add the connection, then you can add your data to your web map. So here in my servers, once I've gone add data, and here is my catchments that I'm going to be able to go in there and have a look at and grab. Oh, actually, I can grab anything that's available as a public REST service there. Let's see. So in that case, what I'm looking for is catchment. No, that didn't work. This is the joy of not going on PowerPoint. So now I've got to scroll through here and find some catchments, but I'm also discovering a whole bunch of other data sets that they've got as well. Okay, I'm going to put that one into a hard basket. Basic process is to come over here, go to connections, and you can add as a WFS, but not really recommended unless you're using it to extract data over a period of time, export out to a file geodatabase or something like that. You can connect to a WMTS or image server or to an ArcGIS server. And then there's a bunch of other stuff as well that's different different things that I don't use a lot of these, but there's some fancy cool new Amazon looking things there, I guess. Okay. One last thing I just wanted to show you that we've just put out this morning, which is kind of at the other end when you use all web services all the time. So for the EPA that we've been working with, they don't necessarily have the infrastructure on site, but if we use everyone else's infrastructure as live web services, what we can do, for example, is we can provide to EPA staff access to a bunch of pre-canned web maps using live stream services from Doc, from LINS, from TPK, from various other sources that might be of interest, MFE and others. And so we don't have to download and rehost any of this data. And so when we look at in terms of maintenance for this web service, the only thing we have to do is to make sure that the web services are all still functioning. So I'm just zooming down here. So you've got data coming in there from Doc, data coming in from LINS as the roads. We've got TPK Marae coming in there. We've got titles underneath there. There are parcels, and then there's also the address points as well. And as you zoom in, they turn on. So that's just an example of what you can do if you go entirely web services. You can bring in data from all over the place. And so that kind of data is found through the data.gov, searching through when in your Arcgis Online web map, searching through things like the Living Atlas, but also keywords like NIWA, rivers, and other things. Okay, so I think that is all we had to show you there. That's us for today. We'll see you next year. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, any questions, send them through on the emails. And big thanks to Ian and Jonathan for supporting us today. It's great having you guys here, and thanks again for just jumping in and helping out. So cheers, guys. We'll see you again next time.
Cheers.
Cool. Thanks
Bye,
for organising
everyone.
it, Dwayne.
Oh,
Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.